Children, so innocent and unfortunately at times so trusting. Today we discuss the monster of the Andes, Pedro López. Let's open the serial killer file. Pedro López was born in Colombia and, like most serial killers, grew up with odd tendencies in a broken home. His father having died in La Violencia just months before he was born in 1948, left Pedro under the care of his mother, who was a prostitute with 13 children. When Pedro was only 8 years old, his mother caught him fondling one of his sisters and promptly kicked him out of the house, rendering him homeless. He became a beggar, who was approached by what seemed to be a kind-hearted man who offered him a home. He developed a strong distrust for strangers after that point, hiding during the daylight and only coming out to find food at night. Eventually, he was taken in by an American couple who enrolled him in a school for orphans. It was there, now 12 years old, that Pedro was molested by one of his teachers. He stole some money and ran away, living in the streets again. By the age of 18, he was stealing cars professionally. The profession ended up landing Pedro in prison when he was once again violated, having been gang raped by a group of inmates. Pedro, now filled with an undying hatred, took revenge and brutally murdered 3 out of the 4 men who raped him while still incarcerated. For this, he spent 2 extra years in prison where he fostered his loathing for the world, most specifically women. His mother, being a prostitute, and the pornographic magazines he would sift through while in prison were his only idea of what a woman truly was, and his demented perversions grew stronger and stronger each day. And then he was released. Pedro would release all of his pent-up aggression and animosity for the world, and the world would tremble. In 1978, Pedro moved to Peru and began kidnapping little girls, where he would rape and abuse them before murdering them. Eventually, he was deported to Ecuador, where his killings only multiplied. Day after day, girl after girl, sometimes 3 a week, he would kidnap and murder to fulfill the internal pit that despised women in all shapes and forms. His mother failed to protect him from such a horrible world, just like the parents failed to protect all of the little girls he slaughtered. Authorities had noticed the large amount of missing little girls, however they chalked it up to the sex slave industry. However, when a flood in 1980 had washed up some of the corpses, they realized that they were dealing with a serial killer. Eventually, Pedro was caught trying to abduct another girl and was arrested. Police, having their suspicions about who he was, were unable to get Pedro to cooperate, so they hatched a plan. Pedro, held in a cell, would receive a new cellmate. The cellmate was a priest dressed as a prisoner. Thinking he was only chatting with another criminal, Pedro let loose his story. Armed now with his unwitting confession, Pedro broke down and admitted to the full scale of his crimes. It was more than what any authority was willing to accept. Pedro claimed to have violently raped and brutally murdered over 300 little girls. He stated how trusting the girls were, how innocent. He'd sometimes bring them to already prepared graves, at times filled with other bodies, and keep them during the night, whispering to them. But he would wait for daybreak to kill them, because he loved looking into their eyes as they perished by his hand. Oftentimes he would keep the corpse, have tea parties with the corpse, but when the corpse became boring, which happened quickly, he would be off to find a new, short-term companion. It's estimated that nearly 100 bodies were found. Pedro often expressed his lack of remorse for the killings and claimed that if he were ever to be released, he would happily continue about his way. After serving almost 20 years in prison, he was eventually released, and his whereabouts are currently unknown. That's all in this file. Be sure to subscribe to my channel so you don't miss the next serial killer file. Also, if you have a recommendation for an upcoming episode, feel free to follow me on Twitter and tweet it to me at @TheRobDyke. And I'll see you next Wednesday. Case closed.